Hello everyone, welcome to this session on SQL injection tutorial. Today in this session, we will be teaching you end-to-end how to perform an SQL injection on a given website. So let's get started. Now before we move on guys, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Intellipaat channel and also click on that bell icon to never miss out on any updates from us. So now let's move on and start with the agenda. Alright guys, so first we will be talking about what is SQL injection, and once we're done with that, we'll move on and talk about how does it basically work. Once you're done with that, basically I'll show you a hands-on on a given website as to how you can basically crack the username and password stage of a website and get access to that website. We're going to discuss that. And finally, I'll be talking about some tips using which you can prevent SQL injection on a given website. So guys, this is the agenda for this session. I hope it's clear to you. Now let's move on and talk about our first topic, which is what is SQL injection. Now let's go ahead and understand what is SQL injection. So guys, SQL injection is basically a method using which you are able to run commands on an SQL server or on an SQL database through the user interface of a website. And then you are able to do malicious tasks such as logging into the website without even knowing the username, password of an account, or getting or retrieving the details of a particular account or all the accounts which are there on a website by running some SQL commands from the user interface, right? For example, in this session today, what we're going to do is we are going to have a look at a website like this, which is basically going to have the username and password fields. And we are basically going to check when we basically enter the username, we basically enter the password, then we are able to log in to the website. But what happens when you do not know the username or when you do not know the password? How can you inject an SQL query from this user interface and log into the website without even knowing any username and password, right? So that is something that we are going to understand. And the method of passing SQL queries from a website into the database directly is basically called SQL injection. Okay, so now you might be wondering, how does it basically work? All right guys, so let's go ahead and first understand how does a site basically work. So first thing that you have is a database, right? And inside the database you will have a table which will have all the usernames, which will have all the passwords, and this usernames and passwords will then be basically fetched by a website like this, right? So whatever username and whatever password you will be entering, right, it will be checked against the names and the passwords which are entered over here, right? If they are an exact match, that is that if the email, let's say if the username is Sam and if the password is QWERTY123, if this matches exactly, that means it's a correct input, and then in that case you will get a success message. In case the username is Sam but the password is something else, let's say the password is not matching what is there in the database, in that case the output or the input will be wrong, and with that even the output will be failed, right? So first of all, we will need an application which is going to work like this. And what I've done is I've created a sample application which works exactly like this. So what I have is basically a website. So basically I have written some code in Python, which is basically going to help us have a web page, right? So let's run this code. So let me just run it quickly. Python 3 1.py. And with this, my code is now running. So if I go to my browser and if I go to localhost 5000, this is the website which I created. Now in this website, what I can do is I can enter some username, I can enter some password, and then I can sign in. I can check whether that username and password is correct or not. Okay. So what is the username and what is the password? It will be basically be picked up from MySQL. So this is the username, this is the password which I have in the database as of now. So if I enter a username which is Intellipaat and if its password is Intel123, in that case, I will get a success message over here. So let us try that. Let us enter Intellipaat and let us enter the password as Intel123. Let me click on sign in and you can see the messages login is successful. Similarly, if let's say I enter the username as Intellipaat and now let's say I enter a wrong password. Let's say I enter Intellipaat123, let's say 4. So if I click on sign in that case, it is going to tell me login failed. Why? Because in my database for the username Intellipaat, the password is Intel123. So I can add more usernames over here. So let's say if I add a username, let's say insert into user. Let me enter a username. Let's say the username is sample, and the password for the same is going to be sample123. Let's say this is a query that I pass, and I missed out on values over here, so let me enter that. Okay, so now if I check my database, so these are the three records that I have. So my username is sample and my password is sample123. So now if I go ahead and if I try this out, so if I enter the login name as sample and if the password is sample123, if I click on sign in, you can see the password is login is success, or the output is login is success. If I, let's say, enter some wrong password, and if I click on sign in, it will say login has failed. So guys, with this, you now get to know that the website is working, right? And this is the prerequisite that you need in order to understand how SQL injection will work. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to spoof this website into believing that I am a correct username, or the username that I am entering and the password that I'm entering is correct. Let's see how we can go ahead and understand that, or how to do that. Let's go ahead and understand. But before doing that, you will have to know some basics about SQL injection. So let's understand those basics. So guys, these are some commands, or these are some syntax that you need to know in order to perform this attack, right? So first of all, what you need to understand is what is the meaning of hyphen hyphen. So whenever you enter hyphen hyphen in an SQL query, that basically means it's a start of a comment. What is a comment? A comment basically means that let's say in this code, in this Python code, if I want to make this line a comment, which when basically a comment is made, then basically that line is not processed or that code is ignored, right? So if I wanted to make this line a comment, what I can simply do is I can add a hash in front of it, and now you can see this code has now become gray, which basically means when I will be running this code now, this line will be ignored. So in SQL, if you want to add a comment, the line or the command for that is hyphen hyphen. So wherever you will write hyphen hyphen, all the commands after hyphen hyphen will be ignored. All right. Then you have something called as OR. Now, what is the OR operator? OR operator basically means either of the input should be true. So if I'm using this website, either the username or the password should be correct. All right. To simulate this, let me just go to my database. So let's say I enter something like this. So if I enter select star from user, where username is equal to Hemant, right? This is correct. The username is there, or password is equal to, let's enter something random. Then it should tell us whether this username is correct or not. This is a query. Let's hit enter. It says password in where clause. Okay, so not password, sorry. It will be pass. The column name is pass. So can you see it is still returning me the username and password saying that these exist. Why? Because I've used the OR operator. But this is not the correct output, or this is not the output that I want when I'm trying to log in. When I'm trying to log in, what I want to do is I want to see whether the username and the password are correct or not, right? So taking the same statement again, if I change this OR to be AND, then it will not give me any output, which means empty set, which basically means that there is no username with the name Hemant and the password this, and hence it will give me a wrong, or it will give me a empty set, which basically means that the user does not exist, and hence I will get a login failed on my website, right? So this is the difference between OR and AND. So in OR, either of the input should be there in the database, and in AND, both the input should be present correctly in the database. Only then it will give us a successful message. What is 1 is equal to 1? 1 is equal to 1 is a statement which is always true, right? And what does that mean? Whenever I will write, let's say if I write when username is equal to Hemant and 1 equal to 1, which basically means that this statement is always going to be true in case the username is Hemant, because the second condition is always going to be true, which is 1 equal to 1, right? So this syntax basically means that the statement or the condition is true, and you can use it anywhere. You can use it while you are working with an SQL query, or when you basically want to go ahead and execute a statement. So now let's go ahead and try these out and understand how will this work when you're working with an SQL query using these syntaxes. Okay, so let's go ahead and write an SQL query and let's see what the output would be according to what we have just learned. Okay, so coming back to my MySQL shell. So let's say I go ahead and first show you all the records again, which I have in the table. So these are all the records that I have in the table, right? Now what I'll be doing is, let's say I type in select star from user where username is equal to Hemant and 1 is equal to 1. Now what do you think will be the output of this? So let's try and analyze. So what did we learn in this slide? We learned that when we use AND, then both of the input should be true. So do we have username equal to Hemant in the user table? Yes, we do. And this is the condition which we are using. So this is true. Now let's see if this is true or not. And according to what we have learned, this condition is always true, right? Now if you try and execute this, you will get the username Hemant and the password Hemant123. And then if we type in, let's say I type in a query like select star from user where username equal to Hemant and password is equal to, let's say, a wrong password. Let's say it's 12345, right? So in this case, it will not return anything. Now let's try to edit this query and let's try to apply the syntax that we have just learned, right? So what we'll do is, first let's comment out the part which we don't need. So we don't need the the part over here. This is correct, but this part is wrong, right? This, because of this, the SQL query is not running. So let's comment this part out. So we'll add hyphen space. So this part is now commented. And now if we just enter 1 equal to 1 over here and give a semicolon, let's see what is the output that we get. And now, as you can see, you were able to bypass what you just wrote, right? So you commented out whatever was there later and you added 1 equal to 1 before that comment. And because of this, this query is just executing up till here, and whatever was there after and, you have commented it by adding hyphen, right? So this is the basics of an SQL injection. If you understand this, now it will be very easy for you to gauge what I'll be telling you later, right? So now let's go ahead, guys, and now let's try and understand how we can do SQL injection using a website like this. Alright guys, so what we know of this website right now is that if I enter the username and let's say this is the correct username as I know, let me enter a wrong password over here. So what happens, let's see. So if I enter the wrong password and if I click on sign in, I get login failed. So I want to change this, or I want to achieve that I should get login success over here. So let's see how we can bypass this feature. So as we know right now that the syntax that the current website is running in the background is select star from user where username is this and password is this. So this is how most of the login websites basically work. Now, in order to achieve an SQL injection query or an SQL injection use case, what I will have to do is I will have to change the SQL query, or I will have to try to change the SQL query from this user interface so that I can basically bypass into the system. So how can we do that? So that can be achieved by using the syntax that we learned earlier. And let me first show you how we can do it, and then I'll explain you what would have happened. So before, whatever string that I'm entering over here, that will have a that will have a apostrophe starting before it, or that will have an inverted comma starting before it. So let me close the inverted commas first, and then what I'll type in is I will type in or, and then I will type in the query which is also always going to be true, which is 1 equal to 1, right? And then I'm going to close this statement. And after this, whatever is there, I'm going to comment it out by typing in hyphen and then space. Okay, so this is the argument that I'm going to pass over here. And now let's click on sign in. So it says this field is required. No issues, you can fill this field. And now let's click on sign in. So now, as you can see, it says login success. Now, how do you think this would have happened? Let me go ahead and show you. So the query that we have in the code is select star from user where username is equal to Hemant and pass is equal to some password. Okay, this is the query which is executing in the background. Now what I've done is I've replaced Hemant with a string which goes something like this. So I first entered inverted comma, then I entered a space, and then I said or 1 is equal to 1 semicolon space comment sign and then space. Now see what has happened. This query has now changed to this query and I've commented the rest of the part out. Now if you execute this query, what will you get? You will get all the usernames and you will get all the password. Let me hit enter. Can you see? I've got all the usernames and I've got all the password. And because this is something which is not an empty set, the website is now telling me that the login is successful. So guys, this is a very simple and this is a very dangerous SQL injection that we have just done, because not only you have got access to the website, not only you have spoofed the website, but in case you are able to get this result set out through some method, you will be able to get all the usernames and all the passwords that are there on the database of this website, right? So guys, this is how you do SQL injection. Now that we know how SQL injection is done, let's go ahead and understand, is it really important to prevent SQL injection? So you might be wondering now, whatever I've told you, not a lot of people will be knowing about it, right? And that is actually true. Not a lot of people know about how to hack websites, or what would be the purpose of someone hacking your website. So probably it just happens to big companies like Sony, like LinkedIn, like Twitter, right? So why should you be worried about it? So that's a valid point. But imagine right now if you're doing a startup, right? Probably right now the need is not there. But if something like this happens to your website, because as we are growing towards a more technological world, a world which is more online, more and more people are getting the skill sets to work online or use the internet. And with that, if let's say somehow somebody targets your website, it is going to be a huge loss to your business, because the users which were using your website will not trust your website anymore. So to sum up, what is it important to prevent SQL injections? The point is that yes, the prevalence is going to be very less. The attack might be happening to your website or it might not be. The chances of it happening is very less, because there are very less individuals in the world out there who can do SQL injections, right? And who would want to target a very small company that you have just started? But does this mean that you should ignore it? Well, no, because the ease of exploitation for this particular subject that we just discussed is very easy, right? And with that, in the future, as and when we are going into the future, more and more people will get aware about this particular concept, this particular technology, and hence the chances of even somebody playing around with your website is going to get you a huge business loss, right? And that's why the impact of this is going to be devastating. So that's why it is very important to prevent SQL injections, be it a very small company, be it a medium-sized company, and it is important for large companies, obviously, right? And that's why you should learn all the best practices for development. You should include people in the team who are cybersecurity experts. You should have test cases in your development team, which is basically going to go and help you out in understanding if your code is safe or not. Because it does not matter if your code is just working, your code has to be safe as well. And this is why the demand for ethical hackers, the demand for security specialists is now increasing day by day, because companies have now started to recognize that yes, this is a threat, yes, this is something that needs to be addressed. Okay, so with that said, how to prevent SQL injections. Now, you will say, okay, so it's very important to prevent SQL injections, but how should you go ahead and advise a company so that they can prevent SQL injections? So let's understand that. So first thing is should use the principle of least privilege, which basically means, let's say this website is able to, insert or select data out of the database. So this website should have a username which has the least privileges allotted to it so that it can only do what it is supposed to do. For example, we just saw that if we use this website, we are able to list all the usernames and all the passwords, which are there in the table. So probably that should be a permission which should not be allowed, to the user who's going to be, assigned inside your code. For example, if you have a look at the code, the username that we have given over here is root, and that is absolutely wrong. You should never use root, or you should never use an admin user in your code. So it's very important to have a username which is going to have the least privileges, the privileges which will only help you to get the work done, and that should be assigned to your code. So that's point number one. Second point is that all the passwords, all the usernames, if they can be hashed in some way, then also this attack can be basically avoided. How? Because right now we relied on the fact that whatever I'm entering, it is not being encrypted somehow, and then it is plainly being passed to SQL. But what if we put in a system in between which can basically encrypt all the data or all the user inputs that you're giving, and that encryption is basically tested out in your or it is passed to SQL as an argument. So in that case, what is going to happen is you will not be able to run any SQL query, right? So that is also a possible, preventive measure that you can take. And third thing that you can do is you can always employ third party authentication. So you would have seen that a lot of websites now have options like login with Facebook, login with Google, right? So all these big companies, they have gone through a lot of, workx, they have been through a lot of situations, they have a lot of people who are working on the security aspect of their website, and you can be rest assured that you as a owner, or you as a manager of a tech team, if you apply your brains and try to create a model which is cannot be spoofed, obviously that is not going to help you out, because the kind of feedback which Facebook and Twitter as a company gets, because they have a lot of people like you, right, who probably would be able to, test the application before it goes on to production, test out with different kind of scenarios, right? And with that fact, their application obviously is more mature, right? So it's always a good idea, if let's say you do not want to go ahead and just make your application secure, because otherwise your thought would be just in making your application secure, whereas your stakeholders would want more features in your application, right? So if you have to balance both of them, why not use things which are already available? And with that fact, why not use the third party authentication tools which are already available out there, right? So this would be some of the methods that you can use to prevent SQL injections, and obviously there are more ways as well. So you can go ahead and practice the best practices of coding. For example, instead of concatenating the arguments like we just did in the code, you can also pass them as arguments, and that is a topic for a separate discussion altogether. But majorly, if you follow all these 3 points, they should be enough to prevent a SQL injection. Now moving forward, let's understand. So this was just a very small topic that probably would have made you introduced to the ethical hacking world. And there are a lot more things that you can learn. So how can you learn all these things? All right. So there is a Intellipaat blog that we have. That we have a YouTube channel. So we regularly post content over there, and you can go over there, have a look at what we have to offer, and then decide, whether you actually want to pursue this career or not. Right. We also happen to offer a course on ethical hacking, which you can see on our website. So if I go to my website, just search for ethical hacking, right, on intellipaat.com, and what you will get is this ethical hacking course and CEH certification. So just click over here. So this particular course is not only going to teach you ethical hacking, but it is basically aligned to the CEH certification, that is a certified ethical hacker certification of version 10. And after this exam, you will be able to clear this certification. Apart from that, guys, we have a lot of key features as well which are related to this course. For example, this course is a 32 hours instructor-led training. It is going to have around 64 hours of self-paced videos. There are certification and job assistance is provided in this course. Flexible schedule, lifetime free agreement. So a lot of things are offered. If you are interested, just call us on these numbers, and I think our course advisors can give you the best deal. Talking about the course content, we have a lot of things that we are covering, apart in which there is SQL injection is also something that we cover in this course. Now obviously what we saw today was just a glimpse of what SQL injection is. There are a lot of other things also that you can include in SQL injection, and this was just a part of the ethical hacking course. There are a lot of things, there are a lot of attacks, there are a lot of practices, best practices, social engineering techniques that you can learn in this course and become a white hat ethical hacker in this industry. Okay, so with that, guys, I would like to take a leave from you all. So I thank you all for attending this session. I hope this session was useful to you, and if it was, please give a like to this video and also subscribe the Intellipaat channel if you haven't already, in case you like our content. And also, guys, if you have any questions with respect to anything that we discussed today, please comment down in the comment section, and we will be happy to answer all your queries. So with that, guys, have a great day ahead, and goodbye.